So when you think about the dominant discourse of art in the 1950s and how heavily weighted it had become with the language of philosophy and history and the heaviness of the ideas, think about what it's like for a young artist coming up in that. You see where the temptation would come from to want to take a painting and just stick a goat on it. Okay, Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns, above all else, must be taken with a sense of humor because that's where they're coming from. Okay, they're coming from a place where art has been taken tremendously seriously, but only for very, very narrowly limited aims. And they're living in a world that is very interesting. And there's a lot going on in the world around them in the 1950s. They want to bring the rest of the world back into art. And that's where this is coming from. So when Robert Rauschenberg takes this taxidermied Angora goat and puts it on an abstract painting, this just sort of encapsulates his gestures as an artist as a whole because he is a very well trained artist and very well educated. He's living in New York City at this time, living in what was at the time a very affordable, vast Soho studio, uh, looking at the world around him and all of the madness and chaos and celebration of New York City in the 1950s, and saying, as an artist, how can I simply turn my back on this and just make paintings that are all about paint? And at the same time, he's a painter who likes painting. So he's taking some of the language of painting in his time and he's bringing all of this other stuff in there too. This movement is that Robert Rauschenberg becomes a part of here isn't clearly named, and so it gets to be called a lot of things. Some people call it the New York School, and some people called it Neo-Dada. This painting, by the way, has the word Dada in it. You can see by the way that the letters line up, but from this angle you can only see the D, but it actually has the word Dada in it. We use pre-pop just because that from a certain perspective, what's really interesting about this approach to painting is how it opens the door to pop art a little bit later. Robert Rauschenberg used a number of different media in his artwork, including painting, but also including, as you can see in this example, silkscreen. So this one's from 1963. It's a little bit later, but it includes silk screening of Renaissance art. So he's using some of the achievements of art of the past, but using a medium that's of his own time, because silk screening at this time is something that's really mostly just used for sign painting. It's not considered a serious art medium. So he's using that medium to get images from the past into contemporary work, but he's also getting all of this other stuff in there too, including in this painting connections to American identity in the form of the eagle in the middle and the helicopters, which are alluding to the escalating conflict in Vietnam, which is on the mind of everybody at this time. So getting back to the 1950s, though, Robert Rauschenberg came from a specific school, a literal art school called the Black Mountain School, where he worked with artists who came from Europe as emigres. These are artists who escaped from the Nazis, people who had been faculty at the Bauhaus in Germany, who had worked with these ideas about pure abstraction and what it was capable of. Kandinsky had taught at the Bauhaus. Many of the Bauhaus artists emigrated to the United States, and Robert Rauschenberg worked with some of them when he was a young artist at the Black Mountain School. So when he finishes his education and moves to New York, the this kind of a painting that you see here has all sorts of connections to his past. The quilt that's here was actually made by one of his instructors there, Annie Albers, who was the wife of the founding director of the school, Joseph Albers. Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg were very close friends. They both came up through the Black Mountain School, were educated by those European emigre artists, and became very influential figures in the post-war art world of the mid 1950s and later. So when Jasper Johns makes a painting like Target with Four Faces, remember he's working in a world that is still dealing with abstract expressionism, where abstract expressionism is still the dominant mode of painting at this time, and the kind of language that people use about painting celebrates its flatness and its rejection of representation. So when Jasper Johns makes a Target with Four Faces, he's making kind of jokes. He's making philosophical jokes about the aims of abstract expressionism. Because what is this painting? It is a painting of a target. But maybe it actually is a target, because in what way is it not a target? I mean, you wouldn't throw darts at a painting, but you could. I mean, if you wanted to, if this painting wasn't valuable to you, you could actually use it as a dartboard. So it is both a painting that is abstract, because, you know, the geometric forms in there, all that beautiful, pure geometry, it is an abstract painting, but it is also a thing. It is a thing that could actually be a functional thing if you wanted it to be. And that's part of the joke of what you see at the top of the painting. If you look carefully, you can see hinges at the top. You could actually close this door if you wanted to, and the three-dimensional relief images that are actually casts of the artist's own face, he put his face into the painting, so that you can either see it as representational. Okay, you can see images of the face there in the painting if that door is up, or you can just decide to just like simply close the door and hey, it's not representational anymore. It can very literally switch from representational to non-representational. So Jasper Johns is being very playful with the aims of painting at the time, while actually achieving what people had been talking about as incompatible aims of painting. So while painting in abstract expressionism had been approached with this language that said that it challenges you, we value art that challenges us, and then we celebrate these artists who take these big risks with art and make art that's all about its medium and all of that. Jasper Johns is taking all of that a step further and bringing a sense of humor to it as well. So when Jasper Johns makes this sculpture that you see on the left here, the painted bronze, it is actually a cast bronze sculpture that he has made and then painted so that it looks like just this batch of used paintbrushes. And he's sort of playing there with our ideas of what is valuable in art, because they'd celebrated all these trappings of painting, but he's sort of like put a lot of labor and skill and effort and work into making something that is literally very heavy because it's solid bronze, but looks like it's just like this throwaway thing. But then this throwaway thing is what people are celebrating from artists, because it's the trappings of how the artwork is made. Jasper Johns also happens to have been a tremendously skilled printmaker, and made very exacting, careful prints that look careless but are actually very labor intensive for many decades later. Those ideas about flat versus non-flat, a thing that represents, and all of the ideas that representation brings with it, those all carry into this painting too. So this is from the mid 1950s, this painting of the American flag, and it continues to resonate and provoke discussion and provoke differences of opinion to this day. Was Jasper Johns being critical by making this painting? What's critical about it? It's not. When we see a picture of a flag, we expect it to lead us into any number of different kinds of debates. In the moment that we're in right now in America, there's a lot of anger and tension and division over who gets to claim this flag as their own and all of the identity that comes along with it. In the 1950s, Jasper Johns makes its painting of the flag, which again has all of that, all of these playful ideas about painting and its history, but also He's made this painting out of encaustic, which is a wax-based medium. And through this sort of translucent wax, you can see that it's made on top of little strips of newspaper that are of its time, of the moment that it's made from. And people have talked about what makes this painting so resonant. And one quality of it is that it sort of embodies this aspect of American identity that were what names America, what symbolizes America, is tied to reality and tied to stories and tied to specific events that transpire and become the background of what the symbol sits on top of. And at the same time, it's a painting.